What is going on, everybody? We are back. We're here. We're at the home studio, and we're going to be going over some more launch monitor numbers, so stay tuned. Hey everybody, Scott Oden coming at you. We are back. We're back from Arizona. It was a good time being back out there where I spent so many years living and going to school and being able to see some of the people I know. Really a cool place to be at to play golf and practice, because there's a lot of energy around that, especially this time of year when the weather is so nice. So really cool stuff. I'll have some more with that in future videos about what I was doing and playing and all of that stuff. But really cool to play some of the courses and get back into desert golf, which is a different kind of style. And, you know, definitely something that I needed to adjust to and get back on track with. But yeah, before we get into today's video, I also wanted to share with you, I'm going to be doing a giveaway. So if you didn't know, I do photography and stuff as well. So I got this print because I was trying out a new print shop, and so I had to order one, and I have it now. But it's of the first hole at Erin Hills, kind of where you're starting. So I will be giving this away, and that's going to be on my other Instagram, Legion of Birdies. So I will link that down below. If you're interested in getting something to hang up in your golf studio, I will link that, and I'll also link it to the full store so you can see all of those pictures as well. All right, so let's get into the numbers. So remember, if you want to send your numbers in, send them in at Instagram or Facebook. These were sent in by Brian W, and these are an 8-iron. So Brian did a very good job of labeling, and as you can see, these are T200. So that is the Titleist irons. You know, kind of a forgiving iron. So there's some interesting things to see here, which there's nothing wrong with forgiving irons. I think more people need to do that. But what also happens is with some of these irons nowadays, to help promote distance, I think you see a lot of de-lofting of the club. And again, not a problem with that, but I think there's some interesting numbers that come up because of that. And Titleist isn't usually that bad, but you know, it's something we could watch at a little bit. So the first thing we're going to do as we look at these numbers is we got to go through our system, right? So the first thing I always like to do is I like to make sure somebody is hitting the ball relatively consistent in the middle of the club face. So we're going to look at the smash factor, and Brian's smash factor is very good. It's very consistent. You can see the spins, you know, a little bit low for an 8-iron, but that could be the ball he's using. It could just be, you know, hey, we're hitting in the simulator indoors. That's all good. Again, I just like to see consistency more so than actually seeing the number of, you know, hey, that spin is not exactly. You can do other things to make sure it works out where you're getting a really, really good read, such as the ball you're using and dots and things like that. But from there, once we figure out that we're hitting the ball pretty consistently, the next thing I want to do is go over to page 2. We want to look at, are we controlling the golf ball? So for these numbers, Brian does a very good job, I think, of controlling it. You could first off just look at where the ball is finishing. Pretty consistent, 6 feet, 3 feet, 6 feet, 18 feet, which actually isn't that bad with an 8-iron. Now, this one gets away from a little bit, going a little bit left. If that is a consistent issue, then yeah, we need to look at making sure we don't double cross ourselves. But you know, if you're hitting it 1 out of every, you know, 20 shots, it's not that big of a deal. You will double cross yourself once in a while, and then you're just hoping you have good timing on when you do it. One thing I do want to point out as well is, well, we'll talk about spin axis first. Again, good spins. You can see the double cross just got away where it drew instead of fading like he's normally doing. But I would be working on a trident drill if he needed to be working on anything, if this was a big issue. Now, the thing I wanted to point out, he does have his settings here. It looks like he updated his settings to the current weather of his location. So one thing you got to be careful with when you do that, and you can do that, it's just notice in the winter time you're going to be getting 47 degrees. You know, that is cold, okay? And so what that's going to affect is the distance, okay? I was playing with my old boss, who is a very, very good player, former D1 player, and he made it through a couple stages of Q school, stuff like that, right? So he can play. But we were talking about it. We were playing, and it was about 60 degrees. And he was commenting on how much shorter the ball was going in Arizona to what he's normally used to. He would pull a club, hit it really good, and then, you know, he'd come up 10 yards, 15 yards short. He's like, man, that's just not going anywhere right now. So just a little something to think about with temperature as you're going through. So for Brian, I would expect his distances to be even farther as we go. But again, it kind of depends on the spin, not knowing what ball he's using. If the spin normally is higher, then he maybe hitting it right where he needs to. So just stuff to think about as you're looking at your numbers. Again, I don't really look at it as much of an issue. Now, the thing I would do with these types of numbers, if you're demonstrating the ability to hit the ball in the middle of the face and you're demonstrating the ability to control the ball, the next thing I look at is trajectory. We've talked about that in the last video where we had a player that I felt like was actually hitting it too high. This case here, I'm looking at Brian, and Brian actually hits it a little bit lower. Now, that could be the golf clubs. So this would actually be a great case where I would have to talk with the player and determine where he's playing. Now, if this player was playing on the PGA Tour, for example, we would be working on hitting the ball higher. I think you got to hit the ball higher if you have faster greens, elevated greens, firmer greens, where you need that ball to stop a little bit quicker. I think somebody could benefit from that. But if Brian's playing somewhere that's more, hey, we got normal greens, slower greens, you're not going to need that. As long as you're hitting it solid, you should have enough spin on the ball to stop it, even if you're hitting it lower. Okay, so that's something I wouldn't bother with too much, because I also wouldn't necessarily want to mess up the fact that we might take a little bit of yards off or start messing with that. But the way we could also look at bringing it up too is just angle of attack. He does hit a little bit down on it. Again, it's fairly consistent. This one looks like it got a little away from him. So again, it would kind of depend on the player. If we're having some issues with, hey, I hit the ball. What I see typically with angle of attack is when you're having it vary a lot, what you'll get is people that hit it really far and really short, and then it's very, very inconsistent in what their numbers are, right? Because sometimes you're really bashing down on it and you just trap that thing and you catch kind of a flyer. And so it doesn't seem like that's a major issue for Brian. So I think we might have to leave that alone as we go. So height might be something we would look at, and that angle of attack, they kind of go together. In this case, if he's hitting the ball this good, and this is kind of a good representation, and over 20 shots, he's getting only one of those double crosses, I would say for Brian, the next thing he needs to do is move into the skills app. Get into the FS skills and start setting up some challenges for your irons and trying to determine if you're continuing to keep these good numbers with a target out there. The thing that people think is, if I get my numbers good, oh, that's going to translate to the course. That's not true. What's going to happen is it's a couple step process that you're going to have to go through. One is getting the technique correct and getting it where you have a repeatable shot and something you can rely on. But from there, now you have to start hitting targets, and that starts accessing a whole different other part of our brain and our ability to perform. And so that, in that case, now we got to do targets, then we're going to start randomizing things, and then we got to start going on the golf course, whether simulator or, when we get out to the course in the spring or when the off season's over, then you can do that. But I think it's time, when I look at these numbers, again, if this is a pretty typical sample, I'd be starting to think, all right, it's time for us to start hitting some targets and not worrying about so much about the numbers. Once you get your numbers dialed in, you're actually hoping to get away from them, and so you can start taking it into a way that the golf course is a little bit more represented. So just something to think about there as Brian's going through. That would be what I would be doing with that player. I'd be having a conversation, making sure we're getting what we want out of it, and then we'd be moving on to the next stage, and we would be starting to think about trying to take this to the course and build our skills with the technique that we've built. Okay, so that's a really important part of this process that I think people want to understand. That's going to get you to shoot lower scores on the golf course. So again, if you have any questions about it, these are great numbers, Brian. Thank you so much for sending them in. You can send in your numbers. I will be getting to as many of them as I can, and I think I'll get to all of them, but make sure you send those in at Instagram or at Facebook. I link those down below. And if you have questions about these numbers in particular, please comment down below. We want to make sure everybody's having some help and good discussions with them, so it really helps everybody out when we see those questions. And if you're not a subscriber, we'll have more coming with some launch monitor stuff. We got the PGA show coming up. Comment down below what you want to see at the PGA show, and I will make sure to set up some appointments. And as always, thank you for tuning in and watching the video. Thank you, everybody. Peace.